Greg Freed. I'm a co-founder of Skillfully, and I'm really delighted to say that our Enneagram coach, Rob Broster, is going to be your guide through this hour. And Rob is a truly trustworthy guide. He's got more than 15 years of experience in professional leadership and team development, including as a qualified coach. And Rob brings a really practical, results-focused approach to developing business leaders. He's used personality profiling tools throughout his career. And in the past 7 years, Rob has specialized in the Enneagram. He's actually coached several hundred people using the Enneagram, and he regards it as the most powerful tool for self-discovery. So if you want to begin the journey of knowing yourself and knowing others, you are definitely in the right place using the right tool. So now it's over to you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate the introduction, the kind words. It's nice to see so many people joining us this morning, and I recognize a few names in there. So hi to those that I know, and look forward to sharing my expertise, my experience, and my knowledge about the Enneagram with you all today. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can give you some details about the Enneagram on the screen, and hopefully help you get a lot out of this session. All right, my name is Rob Broster, as Greg said, and yeah, I really enjoy using this tool, whether it be part of a leadership program or just an individual coaching session, a one-off coaching session, or even a series of coaching sessions. An Enneagram is a really powerful tool for self-discovery and almost like a shortcut to understanding some areas of yourself that might not be 100% clear immediately on the surface. So it's a really great tool for interrogating yourself and building that self-awareness. And we can talk a little bit more about why that's important. So this is it. I'm sure you've seen some version of this image before. This is the version used by my preferred supplier of Enneagram profiles called Integrative Enneagram. There are a few different models or suppliers of Enneagram profiles and tools in the market, and many of them will use slightly different names for the 9 types, but you'll see the 9 types described with these names, and those are the names chosen by Integrative Enneagram. The model of Enneagram is actually an ancient tool. In terms of the 9 numbers and those shapes of those lines that lie within the model, is an ancient tool that was discovered in ancient texts thousands of years ago. So no one knows who invented it. No one knows where it comes from, but it's got some sort of spiritual essence to it. And it's got also, by modern psychology standards, it's got accuracy as well. This tool has been tested against modern psychological tools and been proven to have accuracy and depth and to cover all the sort of different types of personalities that we see. But there's something about that sort of the ancient element of it, which makes it feel a little bit more sort of like ancient wisdom, which I like as well. So it's an archetypal model of 9 different types of human beings. And that's really what the exploration of the Enneagram helps you do, is identify what is my type? What is the type that is my archetype out of those 9? So it's a self-awareness experience. And we're going to emphasize a lot about self-awareness today, but I just must say it's also an other awareness experience, because one of the powerful things about understanding where you fit into this model and how you show up in Enneagram is that you start to have a little bit more understanding and empathy for others and where they come from and how different that place can be from you. So it's really a self-awareness experience and an other awareness experience. Some people don't like personality tools, right? They say they box you. They put you in a box and that limits you. And then people, that's the only way they see you. And I try and move away from that as much as possible. But what I like to think of with the Enneagram is that, yes, it gives you a box. It gives you something to understand yourself, but it's giving you a box to climb out of. In other words, it's a box that if you understand, you can work out how to overcome certain blind spots or shortcomings and climb out that box and not let those challenges and limitations impact you as much as they have previous in your life. So it's about understanding why people behave the way they do. So it's not about saying, this is your behavior and just describing behavior on the surface. There are personality tools that do that do very well, actually, in describing what behaviors look like. But what Enneagram tries to do is go below the surface and say, well, what is driving that behavior? Why are those behaviors happening? Is it due to motivations, fears, underlying urges? And it's trying to unpack that a little bit, which gives you even deeper awareness of what's going on for yourself, and then again what might be going on for other people as well. So it's not just the behavior, it's the motivation behind. So we use this concept of the iceberg, which you might have heard in various contexts before, and we say, why do I use a picture of an iceberg to describe a human being? Well, of course, it's obvious, right? Human beings are very distant and very cold. No, that's not my worldview. That's a little joke. Icebergs are an analogy for human beings because we can only see the tip of the iceberg. We all know that only 10% or so sits above the surface, and that's our behavior, right? That's what we can see. That's what other people can see. That's our actions, which are out there in the world, and everyone can see, and it's evidence above the surface. But what's happening below the surface? Why are we behaving like that? What is driving that behavior? And so that's a little bit more interesting, right? Because we're judging people based on what we see, but we don't know what's going on below the surface. What are the personality impacts? What are the defense mechanisms? What's triggering this person and making them react in certain ways? What are their hotspots and blind spots? What are their motivations? What do they want? What are they trying to achieve? What makes them feel safe in the world, which is really the crux of it? And what are the fears that drive it? You know, the theory of Enneagram says that there are some nature elements in terms of our hereditary aspects, but a large part of personality was formed when we were young, growing up. And we were just young kids, small children, trying to make our way in the world and trying to feel safe. We were trying to feel loved and trying to feel safe. And we worked out various strategies for how to feel safe and feel loved. And those behaviors, whatever was rewarded, whatever made us feel safe, whether it was winning and doing really well, or whether it was staying in control, or whether it was being very quiet and studious, that approach to our life that paid off for us in terms of making us feel safe became then our personality pattern, or sometimes called our personality armor. So by delving down there, understanding what's below the surface, that is useful to then understand how behavior shows up and how other people might perceive us. Yes, there's psychology behind all of that, but your profile is not going to dive into your individual psychology, but it is going to highlight some elements of what might be driving behavior that can give you a good sense of what lies below the surface in that model. So each of these 9 types has a primary driver. We're going to go into a lot more detail on each of them. And the idea here is for you as an introductory section to really start thinking about this model and thinking, well, where am I? Where do I sit? This slide on the screen at the moment shows what the primary driver is, the primary motivation for each type, right? And that, again, if you're going back in time, this is what was most important to someone: to feel safe in the world. I have to do the right thing. Okay, that makes me feel loved and rewarded. I get praised. I have to be helpful. I have to outshine. I've got to be doing well. I've got to be competitive. I have to be unique. I have to understand. I have to feel safe. I have to experience everything. I have to be in control, or I have to keep the balance. That's a very quick tour of the 9 types, and we'll go into a lot more detail. But in this session, we're going to ask you to see where you resonate. What sort of resonates with you? What do you feel like might be your home in these 9 types? And what we're not going to try and say is that you are just one number. This is an interesting lens on yourself, but it doesn't sum you up completely. And you're actually going to get influenced by some other types as well. You're going to have elements of a couple of other types in your personality as well. But we focus on one number because that there is, for every person, one number which is the primary influence. And we say that is the best one for understanding yourself. And we say it's where your primary work lies, right? If you're going to get better in life, if you're going to be a better leader, a better team member, a better friend or partner, your work lies in your number, understanding those blind spots and really working on yourself from that perspective. That's the way to climb out of your box as it is. So we're gonna ask you, as I go around this wheel, we're gonna ask you to think about what I'm saying, feel, does it fit with you? Does it sound like it could be you? And what we'll do is we'll ask you to say in the chat after each one, yes, that sounds like me. But you might find another number on the other side of the wheel that actually feels more like you, but we'll just get a sense after each number, does this sound like you? And then the next question is, well, why worry about other numbers? If I'm definitely a 1, and that's the first one that I describe, and you go, yeah, tick, I'm definitely a 1. What's the point in finding out about number 2 to 9? And actually, the power of the Enneagram lies not only in understanding your number, it lies in understanding the whole of the model. We talk about the path to integration, and it's integrating my understanding of myself within the context of others. That is a growth path, right? And that I can lean on these other types. I can learn from these other types, and I can work out how I can balance myself a little bit, integrate myself, and so that I don't have as many of the pitfalls or blind spots of my type as I would like. Just taking again that example of a 1, just immediately I can say that the 1 has 2 wings, the 9 and the 2. Those are useful balancing forces for the type of a 1. The 1 also has 2 lines, as you can see on the screen there in the middle of the model, a line to the 7 and a line to the 4. And those are development lines where a 1 particularly can learn and grow by stretching out towards the 7 and the 4. So immediately you see that if I'm a 1, I can immediately say 9, 2, 7, and 4 are other numbers of interest to me, other numbers that impact me and that I can also use and balance myself with. Okay. On the other hand, or as an addition to that, it's really useful to understand this model fully, because then we can start thinking about other people that we work with, your boss, your colleague, your partner, your friend. Where do they sit in this model? And we might not be able to do that perfectly. Remember, we can just see the behavior on the top, and we don't want to make an absolute judgment. That person is definitely this. Absolutely, I've got no doubt. We want someone to do this profile and do the test to make sure that there's accuracy in what they're thinking in terms of knowing exactly what type they are. There's no harm in saying, well, I think this person might be a 7. That's interesting, because not only am I matching some of the characteristics with that 7, I'm also getting to understand what's driving a 7. What are the motivations of 7 and the fears of a 7? And by doing that, I have a little bit more empathy with the 7, with that type of person, and I can start balancing my sort of understanding on them, and sometimes getting a little bit, dropping a few judgments, which is, I'm afraid, something that human beings do all too readily. So as I go through the numbers, the primary focus is, how does this feel to me? Does it feel like this is my home? This is probably what I am? And how are these other numbers going to be useful for me? And can I recognize anyone else in my life in these other numbers, so that I can then try to understand them a little bit better? Okay, so that's an introduction to the model. I hope you've got a good sense of what it's about and what it is on the whole. And now we're going to dive into the numbers individually. So again, as I speak, how am I feeling as I speak about the type? How does it resonate with me? Do I recognize myself in this number? So we're going to start with a strict perfectionist, number 1. The strict perfectionist is the type on the Enneagram that is most clear about the right way of doing things and the wrong way of doing things. All right? Strict perfectionist. The name obviously gives a lot of it away. I like things to be in order. I like things to be organized. I like things to be done right. And I will go to 100% to make sure that things are absolutely right. So that is fantastic for your team. If you've got a partner like this, you're going to have a well-organized house. You're going to have things that are neat and tidy around the place, probably, because these people, ones, are very conscientious. They like things to be done well. They're a safe pair of hands. If they take on a task or a job, they're going to finish it and they're going to do it well. They're going to be extremely diligent in making sure things are done as perfectly as possible. And they are quite driven to have a sense of, I must be perfect. I must not make mistakes. And that's you know, that's their gift to the world, but it's also quite tough on themselves because they are highly critical often of themselves and sometimes people around them if things aren't done exactly the way that they think it should be done, the right way. And the problem with seeing the world in this sort of black and white, right and wrong way, is ones can end up being quite judgmental of themselves or those around them when things aren't done exactly right. And the problem with the world, unfortunately, is that there's a lot of gray areas. You know, it's all very well if you're an accountant and if the balance sheet doesn't balance, that's wrong. And if it balances, it's right. That's a case where there is absolutely right or wrong. But how about how you engage with your team? How about how you lead someone, or how you speak to your partner, or how you treat a friend? There's not necessarily a right and wrong with that, but one's see things in black and white. This is the right way, that is the wrong way. And they can sometimes feel quite angry inside. They don't like to express anger because that's the wrong way to do things, but they sometimes feel angry. Why isn't it done right? Why didn't this person do it right? Why can't the world be more perfect? So hope you got a sense of the number one there. I hope you got a kind of picture of what a strict perfectionist looks like, both the positives and the potential drawbacks, because they can get a little bit too much into detail and too much nitpicking for perfection. And yeah, I'd like to get a sense if you open your chat and just if that resonated with you, if you feel like a one, then give it a one in the chat next to your name. So just type one into the chat if that definitely sounds like you. Got a couple of people already identifying with the one. Quite a common type in corporates because they really do well in corporate environments when there's clear expectations and there's processes to be followed. Ones are excellent at their jobs and add a ton of value. All right, we're going to move on to two. Now, two is the considerate helper. Lovely people, wonderful to have around. I love having a two in my team that I work with, because whenever anything goes well, or if I've ever delivered well on a project or a workshop, the two is so praiseworthy. You're doing so well. That's so great. I'm so, I think you're fantastic. And they're such wonderful, supportive people. Twos have a lens towards other people and other people's needs. They really are aware of what you need from me or what you may need from me. So they're super helpful, caring, generous with other people, friendly. They tend to be easygoing and lovely people to be around. They, will almost read your mind sometimes, bring you a glass of water, pull out a chair when you need it, or whatever it might be. So the twos are really fantastic in that regard to have around. Now, what's interesting is you say, well, that's fantastic. Twos are lovely, wonderful. We need more twos in the world, and we certainly do. But there is a downside for that, because twos are looking for something in return. I'm afraid to say this if you're resonating with that and you're thinking, I'm just a wonderful person. If you dig a little bit deeper, there's something below the surface there for the twos, and the twos want something back for their kindness. They want that appreciation. They want that sense of feeling needed. And they really can feel quite upset if they don't get the appreciation or the return for what they are giving. They don't want other people to do as much for them as they do for others, but they just want some recognition and appreciation. And if they don't get it, they can feel quite upset and can turn a little bit, cut you off. You didn't show any appreciation for everything that I'm doing for you. So that need to be appreciated can be the sort of shadow side. The other side for the two that's a little bit in shadow is I'm so worried about other people that I don't really notice what I need. And twos are always going the extra mile and jumping in and looking after other people's problems and other people's stuff and taking care of other people's work, that they don't get to their own priorities and they don't really look after themselves in terms of self-care. So prime candidates potentially for burnout, because they're sort of stretching themselves in all directions to work with other people. So again, if you recognize yourself in that, if you see yourself in the two, pop that in the chat. We'll see how many people resonate. So we've got two of you being twos so far. Again, we're not saying this is definitely correct. This is just your resonance with the type so far. All right. The competitive achievers, number 3. Ooh, these guys, they are relentless. They are hardworking. They put their heads down and they just go, go, go until they have achieved what they want to achieve. Threes have a deep need to feel successful and to effectively win, right? There's no point in coming second. You may as well try and be first. I must be successful. I must achieve. I must be productive, and things won't stand in my way. I will push through. So these are strong personality people, competitive people. They're ambitious, definitely set goals for themselves, ambitious and work towards those goals. And they are excellent at achieving what they set their minds to. As I said, I often use the word, I work with a few threes, and the word I like to use for them is relentless. Their energy is high. Their work ethic is strong. They put their heads down. They will do what it takes to get to the goal and to achieve the goal. Now, again, wonderful to have on your team, guys. It's like if you're a boss and you've got threes in your team, you're like, woo, we're going to knock the lights out, because you give them a task, you set them a goal, they just go for it and they make it happen. And that's incredible. But there's the shadow side to that. You'll notice with all these types, there's the positives and how they add value to teams and environments, but there's the challenge side as well, right? There's the dark side, the shadow side for all of these. That three's relentless energy means that they're pushing ahead, and they're often pushing ahead on their own terms. They're often making their own decisions and going ahead, and they can leave other people behind, right? Whether it be people that are in their teams that they think are too slow or don't get it. It can be, internal competition, trying to beat other departments or do it better than them. And so threes are so competitive and so relentless that they don't always bring others with them, not always the best team players. But if you can get them and harness their energy with the team, they will be highly productive and wonderful team members. So threes have got to watch out for putting too much emphasis on what they achieve rather than who they are. They define themselves by what they achieve. If I'm not winning, if I'm not succeeding, then what's the point in trying, right? They sort of bypass who they are and try and sort of focus on what they are trying to achieve. So that can be a little bit of a problem in terms of just that calmness, that self-awareness, that ability to be the best leader and be the best team player that they can be. So who are our competitive achievers out there? Who likes to win? Who likes to set a goal and get it and make it happen? No one thus far. Are we short of competitive achievers in this group? Cool, interesting. Threes are, fairly competitive. Fairly common in corporate environments, because corporate environments often give them a ladder and a scale to jump up the levels, and they like to feel like they're moving up and moving on. All right, number 4, intense creatives, wonderful, artistic, spiritual, special human beings, intense creatives. Intense creatives have a deep need to feel authentic and feel that they are individuals with their own story, their own life, their own meaning. I am special and unique. That's what they want to feel. So they feel creative, and they are creative. They feel quite emotional, strong emotions about how they want to be in the world and how things should be in the world. They've got a very idealistic sort of picture of how things, maybe like in a way, a vision of how things should be. And that's wonderful, because they want the world to be wonderful. They want themselves to be a unique contributor in the world, and they feel those emotions and those feelings about what they want very strongly. So they can be very expressive, and they can be very honest as well. They're not people who are going to toe the party line or say what the boss says. They will be honest, they will be direct, and they will say what they think the real situation is. So quite a lot of honesty there, which is actually very refreshing often in this modern world. The challenge for 4s is that they have such a strong need to be unique and to stand out and to bring their authentic selves, is that they sometimes struggle to fit in a little bit, especially in this world of companies and organizations which, want people to be part of a culture, want them to be team players, want to follow the rules and the processes they've set up that they think is going to bring success. 4s sometimes rub up against that, and they don't always feel like they fit in. They don't always feel like they feel comfortable in environments where they're being asked to fit in and be like others. And that can cause, some challenging experiences for fours in this modern world. And fours often end up branching out, doing their own things, often creative things. You think of singers and artists and poets and people who you see as really independent and not trying to fit in, often, strange hairstyles and hair colors and all the rest. They're trying to stand out. They're trying to say, I am not the same as everyone else. And they're the unique, wonderful person, but they can sometimes be a little bit dreamy and wanting something which is actually hard to attain in a modern world. Anyone resonate with that? Did I speak to any intense creatives there? If I did, you can put a 4 in the chat and we'll see if we've got anyone like that. 4s are actually fairly uncommon in corporate environments. As I said, corporate environments like people to fit in and follow a culture and follow the values, etc. And sometimes 4s rub up against that. Looks like we haven't got any 4s there. So a pity, or no one is resonating with it, because they're very interesting people. I love meeting 4s. Okay, let's have a look at 5s, the quiet specialists. So the quiet specialists are our deep thinkers, whereas our 4s are sometimes the deepest feelers, the most emotional. Our 5s tend to be the deepest thinkers. They like to understand the world. They must understand the world. In fact, that's the driving motivator. I need to know more. I need to understand. And so they are deep thinkers. They're analytical. They're private. They tend to be quieter. They're very heady, if you understand that description. They're very cognitive. They describe things in very cognitive, rational ways. Don't often show their emotions so much, but rather use their cognitive depth and expertise to explain things. They're curious about topics of interest. If they find a topic of interest, they're going to go deep and they're going to explore that topic deeply. They're not going to kind of just go on the surface and say, yeah, I understand that. They want to go deep. Quiet specialists who come on Enneagram courses with me will often look for extra readings, and not just, short articles. They want to get the book. They want to go and really research something deeply. Now, they've got this need to understand and to go deep and research and think deeply. And so what that means is that they are obviously quiet and focused when they do that in private, but that becomes their way of being. They become quite boundaried. And that's, again, the sort of other side of the 5, is that they can have quite high walls and boundaries between them and other people. Leave me alone. I need to think. I need to process. I haven't got the time. I haven't got the energy to be out with you, to be socializing, to be engaging with this or that. I need my space. And so tricky sometimes to work well with, to collaborate with, to communicate well with, because 5s they build their own place of knowledge and focus, and sometimes it feels quite hard to penetrate into that. So that's our 5, the quiet specialist, the deep thinker, the one who wants to understand and know, but the one who is also quite private and quiet, and sometimes a little bit hard to sort of get in touch with. We've got one person already saying that they think they're a 5 too, so there are a few 5s on our call. And incredibly valuable in terms of their expertise and their kind of depth of understanding and knowledge about subject areas. So absolutely critical to have in companies and teams, but need to work hard sometimes to engage them and bring them out of their shells a little bit to work well with other team members. A few people coming through and saying they feel like they might be a 5. All right, number 6, the loyal skeptic. Interesting name, this, right? The loyal skeptic. It sounds like a little bit paradoxical. The two words don't always sound like they should go together. The loyal skeptic is an interesting type. The motivation here is I need to feel safe. I must be vigilant and plan to create safety for myself because I want to commit, but I can only commit if I feel safe. If I know this team or this company or this environment or this party is going to be safe, then I can commit. And that commitment that they make then translates into incredible loyalty, right? They really want to belong. They want to be part of something. They want to commit and be the best team player they can be, but it has to come after a period of testing, after checking it out. Am I safe here? I must be responsible and keep myself. And if I'm in a team that I'm committed to, I'm going to help them feel safe as well. So 6s are a little bit cautious in the world, a little bit alert. They're the ones who are observing. They've got their tentacles out compared to other people and checking out what's happening out there. Is everything going to be okay? Are we on the right track? They're just sort of, the feelers are out for what's going out in the world. And that means they are extremely able in terms of making contingency plans, in terms of thinking strategically, in terms of making a plan B and a plan C when we're not sure if plan A is going to work out. They're really excellent at sort of raising those signals and sort of warning signs and saying, what about this? Maybe we need to think about something different over here. So they can be extremely valuable, and they are extremely loyal when they're in a team, and they'll go really to the extra mile to work for the team, they'll bring people together. They really want everyone to be part of something that they are part of as well. The challenge, though, is that sort of alertness and that anxiety about what could go wrong can create a little bit potentially of negativity or of worry around, why are you focused on the negative? Why aren't you supporting us in this endeavor or this approach that we're taking? And that's sort of like, oh, but what if something goes wrong, or what if this happens, can create a little bit of negativity and a feeling that this person isn't on board with us as much. So 6s just need to be aware of that. It's great that their antennas are up and that they're thinking about those things, but if they are always pushing that agenda, they can come across as overly anxious and potentially a little bit of negativity and slowing things down in teams or organizations. So just something to watch out for 6s, but we love you in terms of the loyalty and that commitment that you show to the places where you feel safe. Is there anyone in the call that feels they resonate with that 6? That loyalty and commitment, but that carefulness as well. Doesn't look like we've got anyone feeling that they're strongly aligned to 6. So we'll move on to 7. The enthusiastic visionary. Okay, patience, I see a 6 there. Enthusiastic visionary, the 7. Wonderful, fun-loving, engaging, positive people, because 7s are wanting to experience it all. They want freedom. They want experience. They want to do things. So they're always trying things out. They're always saying yes to different experiences. They want to be excited. They want to anticipate great adventures and wonderful experiences and doing positive things. So they are lovely people in general to be around in terms of an optimistic outlook. They don't tend to be too pessimistic or negative. They see the glass is half full. They look for the silver linings. They'll say yes at the drop of a hat, that spontaneity, that ability to kind of go with the flow and make things happen. Visionary, right? Yes, this is possible. We can do this. We can do that. They often, entrepreneurs are 7s. They start a business because they think, wow, we could create something amazing. So they just, get going with stuff. So that's all wonderful and wonderful to be around, and positive people, etc., etc. But this relentless, kind of positivity and yes, we can, and maybe we should do that and that, means they don't always do some of the things that we as human beings have to do as well as they could be, like finishing things, like getting down and dirty into the nitty gritty and finishing the details and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. They get a bit bored. They get a bit stuck in the stuff that feels boring and painful and routine. It's like, no, I don't want to do this. I want to move on to something more fun, something more exciting. 7s can be people who chop and change, do a role for a while, and then they're like, oh, isn't there something else I could do? Want to move companies, move roles, try something else, because, when it gets a little bit routine, when they get used to something, they want to try something else. And that's not a negative thing completely, but again, it can be frustrating for those that are working with them. Like, just finish what you started, just do what you committed to doing, because sometimes they get distracted and will move on to something else. And lying behind that is that 7s have this positive wanting to experience it all, But the opposite side of that is they don't want to experience the negative sides. They don't want to experience pain. They don't want to experience boredom. And so they're quickly trying to move on. They're quickly trying to think about what the next big thing is. And actually, they don't do justice to what is required sometimes with routine, with being in the moment, with being with someone else when they are in a bad place or pain. They might go, no, don't worry about it. Let's just focus on the good side. Let's go and have a beer and think about how it can be better. Hey, I've just lost someone, or I've just broken up with a long-term partner. Let me just be where I am at the moment. They don't like that feeling. They'll try and move on from it. So sevens, wonderful characters, visionary, positive, just hard to pin down sometimes. So we've already got someone recognizing the 7 in them. Is there any other 7s here? Any other enthusiastic visionaries in the room? A couple of other people saying that they resonate with that 7, that positivity. Fantastic. Just be aware of not letting that blind spot get in the way. All right, 8, our active controller. Active controller likes to be in control, feels safe if they are in control and wanting to kind of stay in control. So they're very direct and decisive. They want to get things done. They can be perceived as controlling. The underlying motivation, I must be strong. I don't want to be weak. And so can be quite tough characters, and people can feel that they're quite abrasive sometimes and a little bit potentially controlling. Now, 8s have got that strong character. They are decisive. They do know what they want to do, and they do get things done. They take action quickly, but they're sometimes quite surprised if they get feedback about being abrasive or about being tough, because where that comes from is actually deep care. 8s want to look after those in their teams or in their environments. They have a deep care for them, and they do that by being strong and being in control, but that sometimes rubs people up the wrong way. And then they get that feedback. And they're like, but I'm doing it out of love. I'm doing it out of care. Okay. But it's not always apparent. We sometimes call the 8s the marshmallow with barbed wire around it, right? It can be a little bit prickly and nervous to approach them. But if you understand what's sitting underneath, there's that soft heart, that soft marshmallow underneath. So watch out for the over expression of the 8, of that controlling and wanting to stay in control and not showing any vulnerability ever, because it's important that people can see who we are. Anyone resonate with the 8? I'm sure a few people are resonating with bosses that they've had in their lives that are 8s and seeing that in them. The 9 is the adaptive peacemaker, and the 9 is wanting to have harmony, wanting an environment where there's no conflict, where we get on, where things are okay. And so the 9 is trying to work towards a more harmonious environment, wanting people to get along, is easygoing, non-aggressive, connecting with people, accommodating of others, really good at hearing other people's point of view, good at listening, likes to be part of things and fit in, and doesn't like to rock the boat, doesn't like to stand out too much either. Just like, I'll fit in, I'll do what you want. And so lovely people, approachable people, supportive people, good, solid team members will deliver for the team. Absolutely. The challenge for the 9 is that by not pushing their own agendas, they sometimes forget even themselves, and people can forget them because they just sort of are wanting to fit in. I'm speaking from personal experience. I am a 9. I think it helps for me in terms of my team facilitation, in terms of mediating sometimes in conflict situations, but I need to always push myself to put myself a little bit higher up my own agenda. What do I want here? How can I make sure that I'm looking after my needs and I'm not just calmly going about trying to appease other people? So there's that. The shadow side for 9s is often not looking after their own needs and not speaking up for what they believe. Anyone resonate with the 9 and seeing the 9 in themselves? See a couple of you already. Okay. So that's an introduction to the 9. As I said, where do you resonate? Where do you feel you've got a little handout or a little printout that was sent to you by Nicole as well. And so you can read those, and you can read the words on the screen at the moment, and you can say, where do I think I fit in? And you can sort of resonate on that. As I said, by listening to me for a minute or two on each type, you're not going to know for sure. The best way to do is to do the test. And Jimmy, as Greg mentioned at the beginning, one of the skillfully partners, did do that, and went through the process of getting a test and a debrief with me. And I'd like to invite him in to chat a little bit about what it meant to him to go through this process and learn about the Enneagram.
Thanks, Rob. Should I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, it's just to describe the process for everybody. You write this test, you take this test. It's an online test, and then Rob, a couple of days later, sends you this 23-page. I don't know if it's always 23 pages, but in my case, it needed 23 pages to describe me. And then you have an hour-long kind of debrief exploration session with Rob to help you unpack it. And I haven't taken a personality test before, and I have to admit I was quite skeptical about it. I had researched the 9 different Enneagram types, and to be honest, I found it a lot easier to identify other people. I think I was just looking at the tip of the iceberg and kind of very quickly just telling them, what in my head, that's the, diagnosing their number. But I couldn't really identify exactly what personality type I was. I related a little bit to a few people in the chat who answered more than one number. I was imagining that maybe my report would come back and say like none of the above, or like stick me right in the middle of the Enneagram circle. And I must say, doing the assessment also didn't turn me into a believer, because there are 177 questions, and they say it should only take about 45 minutes, but you're supposed to go quickly and just rely on gut feel. But I guess a part of my personality is that, like, I wanted to take longer and think about it and dwell on the questions, and I think that on some of them I could have gone one way or the other depending on how you interpret it. And so I after completing the assessment, I didn't feel that kind of convinced about this whole process. And that's why it's kind of funny when I got the report. It's very well organized, and it tells you right up front, like, your number, and I got this, like, I'm an 8. I was listening carefully to the way you described all of this, Rob, and like, I'm obviously biased because I know what my personality type is, but I think the one you were least nice about were the 8s, right? So it was kind of a shock. But as I read it, I realized, I mean, it's utterly convincing, right? And not in the way that, like, there's like cunning magazine horoscopes that they kind of write everything so generically that anyone reading any one of them would think like, oh yeah, that's me. It's not like that. I mean, it was saying things that really do feel like they differentiate me from other people. And I would say like 8 out of the first 10 things I read in the report felt true for me. And some of those were good things, and it kind of made me feel proud, like the test had recognized this thing about me that I feel very, is true of me. And then there were others that were like not like that. They didn't feel so good, but not in a way that made me feel like, whoa, that's not me at all. Rather, I felt it made me feel a bit ashamed, which I think points to the truth of them, right? It's like, I wouldn't feel ashamed if they weren't kind of true about me. And they're also the sorts of things that other people who know me and trust me well enough have told me about myself. And actually, that leads to a funny story, because I brought this report to the dinner table with my family, and I read it. I read out like the highlights, and they were all laughing because of how true it was. And my daughter, who's 14, said, "It sounds like Mom wrote the system an email and told the system everything to say about me." So it was really quite shocking how accurate it felt. Although it did have some surprises for me as well. I feel it wasn't just a case of like, oh yeah, good, that sounds like a nice story that describes me well. It also had these things in me in it that kind of make me feel like I need to look more deeply within myself, and kind of, for example, one of the things about an 8 is that they can appear intimidating to other people, even when they don't mean to be. And, you know, that was a kind of realization for me. Is like, it actually kind of, I feel like I had these kind of flashbacks to points in my life where I realized now that's actually what was going on. And I hadn't realized before. And you also, when you were describing the aids, were talking about that kind of underlying psychological motivation. And earlier in your talk, you were describing how our personalities are formed, you know, in our childhood, and there are various things that we develop to feel safe in the world. That to me didn't feel like, oh, I know all that stuff about me. It feels like a place where I've got quite a lot more to learn. But again, in a very genuine way, it doesn't feel like I'm reading this about somebody else and what they have to learn. I can feel it is about me and my personality type.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for sharing.
Oh,
And
sure.
I hope just talking about, so the process that you followed was receiving that profile, which you then read through, but then also having the conversation with me, which you said. And I hope that there was value in that, in terms of like the parts of the profile which were hard to read, or you didn't recognize, you weren't sure about. Did talking with me help you then get it even more fully?
Completely. I mean, yeah, I think that's absolutely essential part of it, because, I mean, like I said, it's 23 pages long, right? So, and there's also quite a lot of terminology in it. So that you mentioned the wings and the lines of connection, and you know, there's various other terms that I actually just didn't really understand. And the report makes an effort, but the truth is, it's so much more helpful to speak to you and hear a person, you know, answering my specific question, and that I could ask a follow-up question to, you know, it's so much better than reading a report. I really came out understanding a lot more. But I must say, I also would like to give you credit, because it's a vulnerable moment when somebody else has read this report about your personality, and it's like talking about some things, like I said, that I feel a bit ashamed about, or that I feel like are weaknesses in me. I guess this is the 8 speaking, right? Like, I don't want to admit to weaknesses. And you didn't make me feel judged. You just made it felt supportive and reassuring, you know. And I think that's your personality. I didn't know you were a 9, but maybe it makes sense, you know, that you have this ability to make someone feel totally comfortable talking about this. And also, you help me feel like I understood this in context, because you've obviously done this for so long. You've kind of met every personality type so many different times and talked with them about their issues, that I felt like, even though I now know that you're a 9, you understood me, because you understand 8s, because this is your job, even though you're not an 8 yourself. And so that also felt really helpful. And you helped me realize the importance of thinking about my blind spots as well. You know, I think blind spots are by definition things you don't want to look at, you know. And so you kind of gently forced me to kind of confront them head on, in this kind of non-judgmental way, and help me. I think, you know, one of the things about the Enneagram that you really helped underpin is that it leads you towards the best sort of person you can be. And I think that was super helpful. And it felt like the meeting with you took the whole process from something that was about insights into who I am, into something that actually inspires action about what I can do.
Cool. Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that feedback and sharing. And yeah, I think, you know, the profile is pretty impressive to read, but to really get it, to really face what you need to face, and to really say, well, how can I improve and shift and grow, which is what it's all about. The debrief is really, really important. We don't, with any clients, sort of just email out profiles and say, good luck, go for it. It's always comes with a debrief, with a conversation. I'm a trained professional coach, and obviously that's what I'm doing in that session, is trying to help you see things and help you have some thoughts about where to shift. So Greg, I think we'll talk at the end about how you would go onto Skillfully to get a profile. And so I'm just going back to sharing screens, because That's what a profile looks like. As Jimmy said, it's 23 pages. There's a standard one. If you really want to dive deep into leadership, you can even get a longer one. But the standard one is 23 pages. And you're going to be getting a lot more in that profile. So it's going to tell you your main type. It's going to tell you about subtypes, which are really crucial and really shift what a type looks like and how it behaves on the surface. It's going to talk about centers of expression, how you show up thinking, action, feeling wise, and where your biases and balances are there. It's going to talk about strain level in terms of where you're feeling stressed out and how you need to manage that aspect. The lines of stretch and release, which are those 2 lines that I mentioned earlier, that each Enneagram types are really valuable growth sort of points to think about. And so, yeah, I encourage you to, if you've enjoyed today, if you think that, wow, that was great, I think I'm a 2 based on what Rob said, but you want to take it further, you want to explore it, I would really recommend you don't go around saying, hey, everyone, I'm a 2. Based on that short introductory session, I would encourage you to try and get a profile and explore this further. So, Greg, I know if you want to wrap us up.
Yes, thank you so much, Rob. Gosh, there was just so much packed into this hour. And I enjoyed the various aspects very much, most recently, the discussion with Jimmy, who had this great first-hand experience. I don't actually know how you were all feeling as we went around the wheel, but for me, it was kind of touching because it was a bit like meeting people in my life, and they would step forward as we went. And I felt like I was just beginning to understand and accept their nature a little bit more. So I think Rob's expert and intriguing session has made it clear that, Enneagram is a really rich and powerful tool, and it can yield deep insights. And so the question on your mind might be, what's the next step? Well, the next step is to work with Rob, if you'd like to, by taking a detailed, top quality Enneagram profile, as discussed a little bit, followed by this exclusive individual exploration session. And it can be online, or if you happen to be in Cape Town, there's an option of having it in person. And Rob obviously will cover topics from your drivers of behavior to those blind spots that might be limiting your effectiveness. And you can find that in the course Explore the Enneagram. Let me share my screen so that you can see it on our Skillfully site. So here is Explore the Enneagram, and you can see that we've put it on skillfully.co.za. The link is to be found in the PDF that my colleague Nicole Niemand has sent you all this morning at the bottom of that PDF, and I'll also put it in chat. You can see we've put quite a lot of information on the Explore the Enneagram page about how it all works. You can either go as an individual for these features, or perhaps as a kind of company team. You might decide that there's a team of you who would like to enjoy these benefits, in which case you get not only these individual sessions, but also a team session in which you'll get plenty of good insights into how you can work together most effectively.